Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Being Human. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about relationship maintenance. This is obviously important in the context of being a human because humans are social creatures. We require other people to be healthy and happy. And so I wanted to talk through a little bit of this today, and we're going to have a conversation about it afterward on why it's important to do this, why it's important to invest the energy into this kind of maintenance. So right up front, I want to talk about the romantic relationships. So my wife and I were having a conversation the other day where, we reflected on, hey, we probably could do a little bit more to invest in our relationship as a couple. Because over time, once you've been together, my wife and I have been together for a little more than a decade now, you start to get the what we kind of consider the roommate syndrome, where you both live in the same house and you're a good team and you're a good partnership and you get things done, but there's not as much individual connection between the two of you. And so it takes a little bit of deliberate investment to make sure that we do that. And, obviously that's myself included, just being thoughtful about the little things, making the gestures to show that you're still interested and still attracted to your partner, and that you make time to spend time together and really dig into the conversations of what's going on with the other person. I think a lot of the times we come home from, whether it's work or something else, and we say, how was your day? Oh, it was fine. Here's a couple of things that happened. And it's sort of a daily report. And we don't really ever dig into the deep thoughts that we have that are sometimes fleeting. And sharing those thoughts helps to build the connection and the intimacy. I think that helps to maintain that relationship over time. But also people change over time. So how do we check in every once in a while to say, hey, what's really going on with you? What are you thinking? How do you see our relationship? What's the good? What's the bad? What are the small issues that we let go past because they're just not a big deal, and we should be addressing them, but we haven't, right? How do we have that conversation in a constructive way where we can say, hey, this thing bothered me that you did the other day, and it's not a big deal, but it was just something I want to bring to your attention. And I think those are the kinds of things that we can really focus on more as a partnership. And so putting in the work in a romantic relationship looks like, like date nights, right? Actually scheduling things, which seems very unromantic or unsexy if we're having to schedule out our time together. But the reality is that life is busy and it's complicated. And to overcome complication, we've got to have a more sophisticated system. And so it's okay to put that stuff on the calendar. And it's okay to carve out some time for yourselves. I remember I talked with a neuropsychologist right when Jen and I got married about that the couple comes first, right? Not the kids. I think this is a really important observation because if the couple isn't solid in a family, then the kids are unlikely to be solid. I've seen a lot of separations and divorces in my day, and that is far, far more devastating to kids than not being able to go to some event or activity or sporting thing. If you have too much built into your personal relationship that you can't spend time with each other, that should be a flag. That should cause you to reconsider, to say, hey, maybe we need to rebalance this in our favor, in the favor of the couple, so that we can be a good team going forward. And so that's the romantic side of the relationships and ways that we can invest in our closest familial relationships. The next set of relationships that we need to maintain are friendships. Now, the first thing I would say is we don't have to maintain all the friendships, right? There are friendships from times past that maybe don't suit us anymore. Maybe it was people from when we were young and we all did stupid stuff together. And maybe that's not the kind of people that you want to continue to have around you. So I would ask that as you go forward and you really consider your relationships, choose the friends you want. Choose the friends that help you be a better person and help you be the kind of person that you want to be. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying, you become like the 5 people closest to you. Now, whether or not that is true, and there is some debate, life is about incentives, right? The people around you create incentives for you to behave certain ways. If you have friends that always want to go out and drink and party, well, they're going to incentivize you to do that because that's what they're interested in. If you have friends that want to volunteer and build community, well, they're more likely to incentivize you. If you have friends that like to work out, right, they're more likely to incentivize you to do that. So think about who's on your team, right? And pick your team deliberately. But then the challenge is, how do you maintain those relationships over time and distance? I know for myself, having been in the military, that's been really hard. I have people that I was really close to, and I'm not the best about maintaining connections. So I've had to try and be a little bit more deliberate, doing things like putting it on the calendar to call friends or family every once in a while, say, oh yeah, I should do that. Because it's not something that comes naturally to mind for me. So do things like plan together, right? So whether it's just regular calls, or you could set up annual trips, or every once in a while, we're going to get together back at the place where, we first met or first grew up. Those are the types of things that we can do on a regular basis to help maintain that connection. And especially with those people who really understand you, it's important to have them as an outlet and for you to be an outlet to them. Because it's easy to have acquaintances, especially in today's world with social media, but it's really difficult to have friends, because friends, unlike acquaintances, will tell you the truth. And the truth is a rare thing in today's world. So I would ask you to treasure them and really put in the energy to maintain them as friends. Now, so starting from romantic relationships and then onto friendships, and now we broaden it to communities. Investing in communities is much harder today than it has ever been. And I think COVID has only made that harder, right? The social distancing that happened really created social distancing culturally. It made it where people have become comfortable in their isolation to some degree. And especially with all of the entertainment available to us today and social media and the ability to order things online and have them show up at your door, the requirement to go out is very low. And that means that our incentives in our lives don't push us to get out with other people as much as maybe we should. There's a great book that was put out a while ago called Bowling Alone, and the authors updated it since. And it was the observation that social groups are decaying over time. And I think as our lives become more decadent and more convenient and more comfortable, we lose the ability to force ourselves to go out to find comfort and community because we think we have it and we have everything we need at home. But I would argue that we don't. And so much like with friends, it's important to build the community that you want to be a part of. Now, if there's already something out there, such as a humanist church, and you want to invest in it, put some energy into that. Volunteer with it. Spread the word. Do some things. If you like to have a gaming community, build that, invest in that, host events, throw parties, bring food. Do whatever it is that you can do to help build that community and help sustain it. Because it takes energy to keep a community together, a lot of it, right? As your relationships get more complex and the community is a much more complex relationship set, it takes more energy to maintain it. I'll link in the video a former discussion about complexity and chaos and how part of humanity's job is to constantly fight against the chaos and the decay of complexity. And so maintaining a community is one of those things. Not the leaders of a community or the people you think are responsible for community maintenance can't do it all the time. And at some point, they're going to transition to something different. So what is your responsibility to do it? Even from the small things, like investing and hosting parties and bringing food. So I would ask you to look at, for whatever community that you want to be a part of, a community that brings you value, how are you bringing value back to it? How are you helping to maintain that relationship and make it what you want it to be? And so the call to action for today is to do the small things that help to maintain relationships. And a lot of this is really on you to help bring it to your attention that you need to do this. I know for me, sometimes I've got to put stuff in the calendar and I have to specifically and deliberately plan time to invest in the relationships that I have. So do things like call old friends that you want to keep connected with. Set date nights so that you can invest in your relationship with your significant other. Use social media, but use it for its original intended purpose, which is to maintain connection over time and distance. It's a great way to keep up to date on what folks have going on and to make the comments and write people a little bit of a note that's more than just a thumbs up or a like. Put in the effort to meet with people that you value and the type of people you value. If you find yourself in a situation where you've been surrounded by people that really aren't adding value to your life, then you've got to be really deliberate about where you go to find people that you think will contribute. I know that when I was, in my late 20s and I was looking for someone to settle down with, I had to really sit down and think about where would I find someone who's going to share the same kind of values that I would, and I thought of things like volunteering or people who play in sports groups because there's community focus and a little bit of athleticism. So I had to be really careful and deliberate because the bar is probably not where I wanted to meet the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And as an aside, we actually met on Match.com, and it was a much more deliberate search process that we both used to come together. Build the community you want, host events, put in the energy. We just hosted a game night last night, and I'll tell you that for me, I'm much more of an introvert. And it took me some energy to make it through the night because it was loud and it was chaotic, but it was worthwhile. It was something that is important to bring people together and to put in the extra work for the logistics and the hosting and the food and everything. And so the bottom line is, if we want to maintain the relationships, if we want to be able to be good humans as part of a community, which is necessary for us, then we have to put in the work. So thank you for joining us this week. We hope that you do put in the work. You continue to come to the services because it is something that we need to help remind us of what's really important in life and have the great conversations about how we get after it and get it done. So have a great week. We'll be off next week, but then we'll be back the week after with our next service on how we become better as humans and how we as humans make the world a better place for our future. Thank you.